This time of year is when parents and students are scrambling around trying to find housing.
Obviously, this community is split about this.
If we don't agree to add the beds, then the housing crisis is only going to get worse.
The student housing crisis is real.
The ingrained phrase, student housing crisis, has been ingrained in all of our minds as part of the strategic propaganda to gain support for this development.
A lack of quality, accessible, affordable housing doesn't just impact our students' education, but it impacts their lives. This has become a moral issue in the community.
I do not believe that we as a community have a moral obligation to respond to the Chancellor's Office demand that this small CSU science-focused campus in a very small CSU town comply with unrealistic enrollment targets.
You know, when we talk about Humboldt being the gold mine, the students are gold. And a lot of us who live here mine that gold.
Students are people too.
I am really coming to grips with the fact that I live in a very intolerant liberal community.
600 college students in a residential neighborhood equipped with a 7-Eleven. It looks to me like the recipe for a nightmare.
Stay on campus and live on campus, but please shop in our downtown.
I have yet to hear a reason why HSU cannot build dormitory space on their own campus.
AmCal is offering an investment of tens of millions of dollars in the community to help serve HSU students without any public investment.
It puzzles me that we have a developer from way out of town when there are developers in Humboldt County who could do this and keep the dollars in the county.
Do I believe that this project is a dream project? No.
Turn NIMBY into YIMBY, as in yes in my backyard.
But I believe it's a good project.
Landlord paradise, tenant hell.
Could you as a council come up with conditions that a majority of you would move this project forward?
Emotions ran high at the July 17th Arcata City Council meeting. Animating the tension was some Sunset area homeowners' belief that city planners are urbanizing their neighborhood without consulting them. To understand their argument and the city's response, we begin in November 2015, when a Monterey developer laid out his vision for redeveloping Craftsman's Mall.
This prototype, in fact, that we're proposing tonight is currently in use at either on or off campus at in excess of 25 college campuses across the country.
As David Moon pitched building dorms for 800 students at the industrial park, city officials sensed a looming firestorm. Developers were simultaneously proposing 4 dense housing projects in close proximity to the proposed village site.
It goes back to getting that bigger picture of, what are all these developments going to look like? And they're all going to be so close to each other, and what's going to be that impact to that part of town?
Do we think the strategy of getting more housing near the university is a good one, or do we want the housing spread all over the neighborhoods? If these projects are coming online, then we want to coordinate conditions of approval so that we have an overall coordinated community. And so as part of this, staff has some concerns that we need to analyze the overall sort of cumulative effects of all of these different projects.
In January 2016, the City Council instructed staff to evaluate the development's cumulative traffic impacts. If the village and 4 other projects are constructed, evening commuters will wait on average a traffic-induced 23 additional seconds at a roundabout to be constructed at LK Wood and Sunset. Motorists exiting the freeway and heading to the heart of campus would use a new lane that would bypass the intersection. To increase safety, the city may permanently close the G Street to Sunset connection, meaning pedestrians would cross just 1 lane of traffic at a time to reach LK Wood from the overpass. The village developer would pay roughly $353,000 to help pay for those improvements if the city, university, and Caltrans agreed to build them in 10 to 20 years. The village developer would also pay $75,000 towards Arcata's wastewater treatment system, which has just enough capacity to service the 5 projects. But critics maintain the city's focus on traffic and wastewater ignored other impacts.
There are too many projects happening in one neighborhood. When projects were proposed totaling well over 1,000 new high-density residential units on several parcels located in an existing neighborhood, approximately a 6% increase in the city's population in one neighborhood, Arcata should have recognized the opportunity and the need for a specific plan to involve the public and to address common concerns regarding traffic, parking, infrastructure, design, and phasing.
Specific plans clarify permitted activities in an area. They're used, for example, to incentivize development of blighted neighborhoods. But the city's chief planner says the Sunset neighborhood had insufficient vacant land and insufficient development potential to justify the cost of preparing a specific plan. David Loya argues beyond the traffic and wastewater, each project has site-specific as opposed to cumulative impacts.
The Creekside development, for example, would affect wetlands. The others would not.
Loya argues if the developers ended up modifying their projects or not building at all, the money the city would have spent creating a master environmental impact report would have gone to waste. By analyzing the projects individually, the developers bear the risk and pay the cost of planning.
Buffer. So that would mean putting in some hills, some grassy areas.
Unconvinced by those arguments and feeling excluded from the planning process, in March 2018, frustrated neighbors hosted a community visioning session they believe the city should have organized. Those homeowners drafted an alternative design for Craftsman's Mall that they say, compared to the village, would increase student integration in the community and cause less noise, parking problems, and social disruption. It features everything from single-family homes to three-story apartment complexes, housing up to 400 students and non-students alike. Despite the neighbors' claim that anonymous developers wanted to build their proposal, city planners declined to analyze it, arguing that because the design did not maximize the number of beds within walking distance to campus and did not offer student amenities, the neighbors' alternative did not satisfy project objectives.
Who sets those objectives? This is land in the city. The city gets to set the goals and objectives for what they want to see on that land, rather than just have some out-of-town corporation come in and say, these are our objectives.
David Loya counters the project objectives reflect city housing goals.
The housing element, which is a part of our general plan, identified in many of the different policy and or implementation plans the need for on and off campus student housing. Really identified the need for efficiency in single room occupancy type units, and that infill development and looking specifically at rezoning and upzoning parcels to satisfy the city's need for housing into the future.
In May, 2 planning commissioners called for more public conversation about the city's housing future. They recommended the city council reject the village.
The goal of developing a comprehensive infill strategy as a community, that's something that I feel like we're very out of date on. I think we would have a very different discussion if we had an infill conversation and developed new strategies to utilize to the best potential, not just of the students, but of the interface between student housing needs and community cohesiveness, and all of that together through the public scoping process and all the meetings that would happen if we were pursuing this through a general plan update. Here we are with the cart before the horse on this project.
If we had a clear infill policy, which this would fulfill, if we had a statement of goals that provided for student housing without insisting that this extremely large project is the best and only way to fulfill it. But I think that the plan update process that the city has embarked upon will actually address those issues. And at that time will be an appropriate time to reconsider what to do at the site.
In July, questions resurfaced about the public's role in village planning. Brett Watson read from the city's own planning best practices.
Gather basic info, get market data on housing, infrastructure capacity, population growth rates, etc. The second step is engage stakeholders, community, builders, lending institutions, find out what the community wants and find commonalities. The third step is to rezone it to what you ultimately want that to be. And then the fourth step is attract developers.
Watson implied the city jumped straight to step 4 while skipping steps 2 and 3. First, the developer pitched REZONE and Craftsman's Mall to accommodate the village. Then the public responded to that proposal.
Transform community engagement and involve everyone in the planning process from the start. I feel like that's where a lot of this kind of went wrong.
That process did not go wrong, according to David Loya. He says Watson described the strategic planning process, but the separate discretionary review process often involves developers pitching projects that deviate from existing regulations. Now is the time to rezone Craftsman's Mall, village proponents argue, because Nancy Kirkpatrick has finally agreed to sell the land. Proponents say the rich applicants are capable of building the dense housing that yields the revenue needed to make clearing up the former mill site financially viable.
This developer has, through 12 planning commissions, changed it to the project you have in front of you, been incredibly responsive. HSU is a landlocked campus in a landlocked city. They can either solve this problem by themselves, and you won't like the solution because we had that solution in front of us. Taking over the C Street neighborhood, going down to 11th Street, buying up houses, knocking them down. That was the plan. And we begged HSU to work with us to do projects like this.
We have lagged so far behind our needs in this community on housing production that there is enough demand that you can have 1,000 units come online over a couple of years and you still have demand.
What the evaluation says is that even with the addition of the proposed population associated with each of these upzone projects, we still fall within the population projections included in the general plan.
David Loya says the 5 projects are compensating for a recession-induced housing development lag. Critics counter that the general plan did not anticipate that one neighborhood would absorb so much of the city's growth. They point to the 150-resident Canyon Creek project. Approval will require rezoning from low to high-density residential. The Creekside project would require annexation of county land anticipated in the general plan. It would house 114 people. Construction has begun on the Twin Parks project for 80 residents. The 285-person Sunset Terrace apartments are already renting. None of those projects are as large as the Village, which under the most recent proposal would house 602 people. As soon as August 15th, and likely in the next few months, the City Council will vote on the project that sparked the urbanization firestorm. That vote will also serve as a referendum on whether city planners adequately involve the public in building Arcata's future. Thanks for watching. This is Eric Black Video, and I'm Eric Black.